All right, and keeping an eye on the time. I want to thank everybody so much for being here. Good morning. Welcome to this session titled Integrating Design Thinking Principles and AI Technologies in Education, a Framework for Enhancing Creativity and Ethical Engagement. I'm Dr. Kelsey Hoteling. I'm the Director of Research Experiences at American Public University System, and I'll be the chair for this session. So if you have questions for our presenters, please type them in the Q&A section of the webinar room, and we will address them during the Q&A session at the end of the presentation, time permitting. It is my honor to now introduce our presenters today, Katya Schroeder and Dr. Ada Sanchez Presampieri. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Kelsey. So we just want to give you a little bit of a background, and we welcome you to our presentation on integrating design thinking principles and AI technologies in education. Although, as you can see, Katya and I are at two different institutions. We have worked together at another institution for many years. We developed the entrepreneurship program at that institution, and we developed a very successful design thinking series of courses that was also integrated into the general education portion of the total school curriculum. And it was at what we are going to discuss was a 1,000 level design thinking course. Gotcha.
Yeah, and so hello, my name is Katya Schroeder, and thank you for the opportunity to share what we've experienced and also developed in our class with you, and we welcome any questions at the end. So this is what we're going to cover today. We're going to dive into teaching design thinking. Our idea is to provide a specific example how to apply AI tools for a class. In the past day and this morning, there were a lot of fruitful discussions about different ways of integrating AI and how it's impacting learning, teaching, and assessment, and also curriculum development. And this is specific to one course that we've been teaching before. So you see it before and after. So we talk about the advantages of experiential design thinking projects. We discuss some of the hurdles that we encountered with the traditional approach, and then also some of the hurdles that we will discuss with the AI-based approach, but also the benefits that it has to teach students AI tools and apply them. And this very much ties into the keynote from yesterday, also where President Nuno Fernandes said that we need to prepare students for the real world. We subscribe to the same approach, and companies expect students to know AI, understand AI. In addition, design thinking is an approach that is used in smaller organizations, startups, and large organizations. So by combining the two of them, we're really aiming to prepare the next generation of talent for the real world, the workforce that they will be experiencing. So let's start with design thinking.
Yeah. So let's give you a little bit of background for those of you who may or may not be familiar with design thinking. Design thinking is a process of iterative design that emphasizes the user perspective. It's really a structured process of problem solving, and it's really meant for complex, or what is referred to as wicked problems that have multiple stakeholders. There are different templates for design thinking. There are multiple different companies and schools that have their own design thinking process. We cover that in that course as a foundational understanding for the students. But really what we do what we did in that class is we focused on the Stanford D-School design thinking process. And in that process, there are 5 key stages. One of them is emphasize. The next one is define. The other is ideate. The next is prototype, and the final is test, which is also like a feedback stage. And really in these last two steps, it becomes a feedback loop in that you prototype, have feedback, implement those improvements, reprototypes, so on and so forth. And again, want to reiterate that it's a human-centered approach. And really you are developing, it really focuses on developing empathy and understanding consumer behaviors. And as Katja mentioned, it's really used throughout every industry that I can think of. Some industries use it more, but it is consistently used throughout the industries.
Yeah.
So hopefully a very brief understanding of design thinking.
And Ida, if I may add, it is a very collaborative process, and students work in teams, and that, you know, teamwork can be difficult. So that is helping them also to practice teamwork as well within
Yeah,
that model.
and to add one more thing, what the great great opportunity with design thinking is that it really welcomes and really celebrates diverse perspectives.
All right. So we're gonna jump and discuss the benefits of AI tools. When we go through the different steps of the process, there are three recurring themes that you will see that AI tools support. One is it really helps to accelerate the process, the simulation that students go through, applying that.
Ooh, did she freeze? Okay. Let me just text her. Oh, wait, she's back. Okay.
Oh, sorry. I didn't know that my sound disappeared, so I'm going to say it again. The benefits of using AI tools are really based on three themes that you will see when we go through each of the steps of the design thinking process. So one is it accelerates the process. Students have to complete projects within a semester, and that is time pressure for them. So with the AI tools, we show ways of how we can accelerate certain steps. It also helps them to overcome the lack of access to stakeholders, because part of that feedback loop is to bringing diverse perspectives, different views, and students don't always know who to interview or to ask. So that is another area where the AI tools can come in. And also we want them to experience AI, but also develop a more responsible and ethical approach to AI use, and experience also the limitations of track. So this one is like, for example, in my marketing class, I let them run a test between Google, Gemini, and ChatGPT so that they see different outcomes of the inputs that they have. So we want them to experience in a safe space and understand how they can use it responsibly and strategically.
Right. And
let's
Katja, just in terms of accelerate, just again to understand the course met twice a week for 1.5 hours. So as we know, we've all taught that 1.5 hours, each session, you're losing that first 10 minutes and maybe that last 10 minutes. So it can be quite stressful for them to get everything going in within that time frame. So the first step is empathy, which is identifying the stakeholder. So in the traditional approach, students in their groups, they would self-select groups. They would brainstorm and list out all the stakeholders they thought was involved with the problem. And they would have 3 different problems from which they could choose from. Their next task was to research and find potential interviewees from within each stakeholder group. This was often a very challenging step, and often the faculty had to facilitate some of the interviewees.
So from the AI tools, we started using ChatGPT first, because that was one of the tools that students adopted the quickest. So we saw them already using it. And so we using in this class specifically, students can apply it to identify different types of stakeholders And then also for the second task, to develop personas that are representative of the different stakeholder groups that they have. The reasons why we went with ChatGPT, or it could be also a Google Gemini, is that it needs to be accessible and also something that students are already using, and so that there is no limitations for the students to have it. We don't have a corporate subscriptions. We use free tools at this stage.
And we'd like to ask you a question, and maybe you can vote. It's a Slido. How long do you think it took students to complete tasks 1 and 2 in the conventional model?
So there's a QR code that you can use to join Slido, or you can type in slido.com and then the number 4239711. I see. Okay. We give
Do
it
we
a
have
little
any
bit of
other?
time for people joining. Right now
We'll give
we
it a
have a
couple of time, yeah.
50% between 1 week and 3 weeks. So let's
Give
see.
another 15 seconds.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I see one day coming up. Let me scroll down and see whether. Okay. Okay.
Okay.
I think we're good, right? So
We're good.
yeah.
So I guess I'll fill it in. It actually took them about 3 weeks. Again, meeting twice a week, but really what the time-consuming part was to actually set up appointments and actually get everyone together to meet with the stakeholder interviewees. So it took about 3 weeks. There were some sections of classes that were able to complete it in 2 weeks, but that was really the group of type A+ students who were on it. And I know we've all had those type of students, but generally 3 weeks.
And to answer the question of how long it would take by using AI, we can actually reduce it to 1 session. So the 1 day, the 70% that we have there, that would be a good answer of how you can accelerate it with AI tools at that stage of the process.
So in the next step is still under empathy, which is their interview questions. Here they're developing open-ended questions to ask those stakeholder interviewees. And again, they would meet in their groups in class and really brainstorm the questions. After the questions were approved by the faculty member, they would then go ahead and confirm the appointments with the stakeholder interviewees, and then obviously ask the questions. What some challenges were, again, we're mentioning that although this was part of the entrepreneurship program, it was also a general education course at a 1000 level. We had many freshmen enrolled and many students who had no experience with a research and design course. So there was a lot of filling in the gaps for these students, and that could be quite time consuming.
Let's go to the question first, because before we talk about the AI tools. So our question to you right now is, what was the most common feedback that instructors gave to students' question list when they're submitting the questions that they're planning to use for the interviews? It's an open, you can type anything to it. It's the same Slido. It's the QR code that you see here, or slido.com and then the number 4239711. And it should be a word cloud, so you can type any comment that you think how the instructor would give, what feedback the instructor would give to students when he sees the questions, the initial round of questions that they send for review.
While we're waiting for everyone to participate in Slido, do we want to, Kelsey, address that question in the chat?
Let me see what I have.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
when
one from
generating-
Jennifer Culver. when generating personas, how do you mitigate bias in AI? It's a really good question.
That's
Mhm.
really an excellent question. I think
Yeah.
what we made the effort when we ran the course using AI was really to hone in on prompt engineering and to make students aware about that potential bias so that they were not inputting or creating opportunities even more for AI to be biased. Katja, do you want to maybe comment further on that?
Yeah. Um, Part of the assignment is also that we discuss exactly that when we get these personas back, that we discuss it with the class on any potential or hidden bias that these personas can represent, and that also leads to a question of how these AI tools are being developed. We also run separately a session across all classes to show a documentary that's called Coded Bias that really talks about, how software is being developed. It was there's one initiative spearheaded by a researcher from previously at MIT who really discovered the bias in AI software tools. And so we use that as a complementary session also to address that issue. Oh, now I
And
see a lot of, go ahead.
I see a lot of answers, but I just want to add a little bit to what you're saying. And again, we were the institution that we had worked at was relatively small. Our student population, our total enrollment was about 2,500 students, but this particular class was exceptionally popular. And we ran between 6 and 7 sections of a 25 student classroom size. So it was, as you can see, quite popular. Let's see some of the answers, Katja.
Yeah, so be more specific. Yeah, that's definitely and sometimes one of the biggest problems we got that the questions ended up, although we said open-ended, that they were like yes or no questions, that they actually weren't open. So we had to discuss, what is an open-ended question,
Yeah.
closed-ended question again. So that could also test, what the intake is from that previous session on it. But
Mhm.
yeah, we got a lot of questions that wouldn't give you qualitative answers that were more like yes
Yeah.
or no.
So
And
one of the
also some that were
requirements,
very convoluted.
and one of the requirements for the questions was that they were supposed to dig deeper based on the responses they received. So when they were getting a yes or a no, where do you go from there? And I would say 75% of the initial questions, even though they were advised an open-ended question does not end with a yes or no, 75% of the question would be yes or no at the first go around of review.
Yeah.
But
And
all of those problems that you're mentioning there were also popular problems.
yeah. And then so the students can really use the AI tools and put questions in. That also helps them a little bit with practicing prompt engineering so that they can kind of like experience what the input versus output is when they ask question. Granted that it's not a real world, that it's an AI designed environment, but it still gives them an idea of what potential answers are. Next slide.
So this is just a basic overview of what the next steps were. We'll go a little bit more detail by each slide, but this is the define and ideate stages. The first one was involving downloading their learnings, which was essentially the interview question answers. Then they went on to kind of categorizing those learnings into themes, then deriving insights through, analyzing and deriving insights through what they've categorized, and then developing more how we might we address these problems, and then finally an ideation step. Okay. So again, we're defining and downloading the learning, and essentially they would be transcribing and putting what their learnings were onto little Post-its. And this could be very time consuming in class. Often it would take almost half of that 90-minute session just to get them focused and writing down, and to ensure they weren't writing whole paragraphs, that they were just understanding that these should be a bullet point and a specific idea per post-it.
For the AI-based approach, we skipped it at that stage. That doesn't mean that students are not using tools like Grammarly, on their computers, which are also AI supported, or cannot use tools like Otter AI to transcribe interviews, but this is because it was in an on-site classroom environment. But why do you, and I gave you a little bit away, but why do you think it's not necessary at this step? Yeah, so this class, while we're waiting for some answers, so this class, the primary model is on site undergraduates, so you can have variations of that in that case, you could use other tools like Moodle, but for this scenario here, we concentrate on the modality in an on-site classroom.
Mhm.
Haha.
The course
Yeah.
was offered online, but we actually did not integrate AI into the online version because the online version was totally asynchronous and it was very challenging to do teamwork. So the format of the course was a little bit different.
Yeah.
Redundant, yeah, right. I mean,
That's
precisely,
exactly right.
yeah,
Yeah.
precisely that.
Yeah. So we already used it. That would be kind of like AI vetting AI, and we don't want that. Let's go to the next step.
So then the next step is that the students would analyze, their learnings. They would categorize those post-its into themes. They would identify similarities. Once they categorized it, then they would create what we would consider headlines, which is really the titles of those themes. Gotcha.
So for the AI tools, they can be used to synthesize and combine some of the learnings from the stakeholders to identify commonality, differences. They can also help students to put it into a matrix table. ChatGPT has these capabilities, for example. I also use Microsoft Copilot for that. So they can actually use that to really slice and dice the information they have based on different keywords and themes that they want to discover for their project. And the next question for you is, what can be a limitation of using AI at this stage? And I'm going to show you the QR code again. It is the same number 4239711 on slido.com, or if you're already logged in on Slido, you can just go to the next question there and just hit go to the next one. We picked that picture with the person at the edge because when discussing with also colleagues, it's because we're like all experimenting. We're all in the same stage with the new tools, and it can feel like this, but we have a little, what you can't see in this, we have a little, how do you call that? The thing when you jump and you have that helps you, go safely to the ground.
Parachute.
German parachute, that's right. I had it in German, Fallschirm parachute. So this is kind of like a parachute to help you get through this. Yes, and so those are all good points because some of you also already mentioned in the chat earlier, like how can we avoid bias? So understanding bias, understanding data privacy, understanding that these tools can hallucinate, are not perfect. You have to validate sources, that how the output you get is also based on the input, so it doesn't give you the whole picture. And And most importantly, I think that's also coming there with the point on innovation, is that we feel that the critical thinking skill needs to be developed further, especially with the rise of AI. And we want to teach students to critically think about the use of AI and also outside of AI, so that they don't lose that skill. It's the opposite. It has become even more important than before.
Right. And then here is just an illustration of what we were talking about in terms of downloading and categorizing. So once they were able to categorize, we would use these boards. They would put them in their individual categories. Some, put boxes around it. Others were circling. Others just listed it on a board. And they would discuss and analyze and decide what the insights they gained while they were in class. And what was really great about this in terms of the traditional approach is that they put these on the walls of the classroom in kind of a gallery setting. And the other groups would walk around and they had color-coded stickers, which best idea, second best idea, third best idea, and they would vote for the different ideas. So it was really, again, celebrating the diverse perspectives, very collaborative, not only collaborative within your own peer group, but collaborative within the whole entire classroom.
So in this stage, we said it's not necessary because, the interaction is happening on site with engagement. If you work in an online classroom, you could use either Padlet or Mural, but I think Mural is subscription based. We prefer to use tools that are non-paid, but there are online software tools that can replicate the experience as well.
And then after they have done that and they have decided what their best theme is, what their most important theme is, they would then develop a how might we to solve that theme's core problem.
And for the AI-infused approach, that is really an extension of what students have already practiced with creating questions, because they already worked on, refining questions, what are good questions, and now they applying that for the how might be questions as well, which leads to more possibilities for the rapid ideation stage, which is one of the most time-consuming stages of the process with the prototype building as well.
So the next stage would be they would then brainstorm ideas and then they would develop little doodle sketches for those ideas. What the main challenge for the class was that many students, you spent more time with students who were like, I can't draw, I don't want to, I find this difficult. Or you would have the student who felt that they were like the next Picasso, and every little doodle had to be this very overdeveloped sketch. And as you can see, these are like the most ideal sketches, and they're very simple, but they get the idea across. So it was challenging to get students let's just get your little doodle sketch down on a Post-it and we can move on type thing. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I don't know, you probably cannot see because I have my background blurred, but I'm more of the person who is not artistically skilled. So my cat looks maybe not quite like a cat on my little sticky notes. And that's why AI tools are great, because there's like Meta Imagine or DALL-E, Midjourney, and even within ChatGPT, you can create images that can replicate a sketch or of the idea that you want to share. A lot of our students also like to use Canva. They already using it when they develop presentations. So they also use it to develop sketches.
Then in the traditional approach, the next step was to develop the initial prototype from their ideas. I mean, let's back up. They would vote on which idea to pursue. So once they did that, they would do their initial prototype. That could be a hand-drawn wireframe. It could be a dog dispenser created from construction paper. Or we, at that institution, we had a innovation center, and if the students had the ability and we had enough time, we could do a 3D printed prototype.
Yeah, and the 3D printing process takes time, so that's why it's important if you go through the ideation process and the different prototypes that you can accelerate it actually with some of the AI tools, right? So this is the next iteration of the step.
Mhm. So in the traditional approach, as we mentioned, everything seemed to take much more time than you would think. And in fact, this is a step that if you do this at Stanford, it's an afternoon, but it never seemed to be able to do that in an undergraduate course. So by the time we would end up at that prototype step, we would have limited time. So generally, again, this is a feedback loop. They would do their initial prototype, they would all get feedback, and then they would implement the improvements in the next iteration of their prototype. And due to timing, generally, they only really had the opportunity to make one or maybe two next step iterations. There were always some concerns / complaints that they wanted to make their prototypes a little bit more realistic. They wanted to be able to really illustrate the improvements, and with their limited skills and time, they often wouldn't be able to do that effectively.
Yeah. And so with AI, we can shortcut the process a little bit, and also we could include more ways of, if, in addition to, let's say they have one prototype and they want to visualize the next iteration of the prototype. So maybe it is not that that 3D one that they have, but at least they can show what the next step would be visually if there's no time to do the actually printout of it.
Yeah. And I think for when we, if you just want to back up,
Yeah.
Katja, one more.
Mhm.
And with the AI-based approach, they were able to really rapid prototype, and some of them went up to 8 iterations. So, and they were able to really clearly illustrate what the different improvements were.
Oh.
So as you can probably figure out, our findings were that the hybrid approach using AI really to augment and facilitate the traditional approach really improved critical thinking.
Yeah. And in addition to that, we want them to use tools that companies are using. So we want them to develop these digital skill sets, but think about it critically, as Ida said, because the critical thinking is a key soft skill that they also need to develop with the hard skills of knowing these AI tools, and already be familiar in the way companies work and what tools they are also using when they enter the workplace. That's a very applied approach to
Yeah, it's
teaching.
very applied.
Right.
And just to reiterate, Katja's used, we've used it also at my current institution, these type of techniques in other classes. In fact, this fall at a graduate level, I'm a graduate, in the graduate department at my current institution. We will be running a master class in this design thinking using this hybrid approach. So I'm personally really excited about it, and Katja is going to come in and be a guest speaker for me. So I'm very excited.
Yeah. And it is applicable to other types of classes as well. So it is not an approach that only works with design thinking. So I also use the AI tools. I integrated it into marketing classes.
Mhm.
So it is really applicable to a variety of courses. It is not just specific to that design thinking class. And we look forward to also listening to your experiences, questions that you have, suggestions. I know we have also like in the Wova app or on the Zoom, there's a Q&A that you can use. We have a Leave Behind, which are some AI tools that we are working with. There's an entire spectrum of AI tools that were also discussed in the past 2 days. So this is not a comprehensive list. This is more a list of tools that we experimented with. And so when we look at the tools, we look at two things. A, what is the longevity of the tool? B, is it applied in the corporate world? Is it something that, the students would also experience at the workplace? And then also how accessible that tool is. Is there a free version that we can use for classes? All right.
Okay.
So open it to Q&A if you have questions.
Yeah, we have plenty of time for questions. If you all can think of any, I certainly am deeply impressed by this presentation. You really covered so much. It is a challenge to define design thinking within a 30-minute session as well. So I applaud you for that. And just as folks may be thinking of questions, I wanted to ask you both, what were some of the AI tools that students immediately were using and comfortable using? Was it just kind of ChatGPT, or did they have any ones that they use that you didn't know about?
I can answer that question because I actually ran a survey in my marketing class where I asked students what tools they are using. And I would say 90% of the students were using ChatGPT within the survey sample that I took, and it was a marketing class. That was followed by DALL-E, and then some of them used Google Gemini. Most of them were not familiar that Grammarly is an AI supported tool. So I also discovered that while students were using AI tools, they didn't really understand, that all the tools or programs they're using are AI infused. I didn't really find a new tool when I did the survey, but I'm pretty much sure that the students that we have maybe outside the survey sample, that they are tools that we can also, then experience or get to know through the students that we have. For example, if we have some students who work on media production projects, or we have some students who are more in the medical space. So ChatGPT was there. When I ran the test between ChatGPT and Google Gemini, which was for content creation at that time, then I asked students afterwards which tool they now would prefer. After the test, actually more students preferred Google Gemini as opposed to ChatGPT, because Gemini, when you run the queries, you can also get suggestions and leading questions that you should ask yourself. So it was a more comprehensive approach that then the students experienced there. I haven't seen students using Perplexity or Claude or Pro, but they might be. It didn't come up in the survey, but we can share these survey results also after the conference if you wanted to follow up.
And again, the institution that we did this was a small liberal arts college, so that those results might be different at where the institution that Katja is now, or certainly the institution that I am at. And my plan is, when we run the design thinking masterclass in the fall at my current institution, is that we will run a survey just like we did at our previous institution.
Fantastic.
Any other, I think is there some questions or?
Yeah, I see
Yes.
one. There's one question that says 90 minutes class sessions. Yes. So we had 2-hour classes. So the institution where this class was implemented is
290-minute, twice a week, Monday and Wednesday, or Tuesday and Thursday. And believe it or not, there was a difference between a Monday and a Wednesday or a Tuesday and a Thursday class, because Mondays seemed to be like they were just waking up from the weekend.
I think
So
we
I've-
already released sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you. Go ahead.
You're good. Yep, I have a
Yeah.
question that came in and an FYI about the sharing suggestions poll. Doesn't look like it's active. So if one of you wanted to check on
Oh,
that.
okay.
Ooh,
All right,
sorry
then
about
let
that.
me.
Oh, good.
Mhm.
Thanks to the participant who let us know. But I did
Yeah.
have a question about how did your students respond to the curriculum changes? So before the AI integration as compared to after, what were
Sure,
the biggest
sure.
changes?
So I'll be frank, we didn't do a test. So it wasn't as if half of the classes were doing standard versus half of them doing the AI version. I think all of them were very excited. They almost felt, I think they thought like we were in on some kind of scheme with them as opposed to the rest of the school. Because we were more embracing of AI than any other area in our institution at the time, which actually probably rings true today for many institutions. So they were sort of excited about it. Would you concur, Katja?
Yeah, and actually that was also a
Yeah,
question that I did in my
co-conspirators, exactly.
survey. I in the same survey where I asked students about what tools they are using. I also asked them about the expectations that they have. When they, that the college teaches them the AI tools, and the majority expects and appreciates if the school teaches them the skills, and only uh, it was a few percentage, it was below 10 were worried about AI tools, but most of them wanted to embrace it and expected our institution to also teach them the tools.
And I think someone talked about in the chat uh prompt engineering. And I agree. I think that faculty have to be trained on that. We are starting at my current institution, we are starting to integrate prompt engineering into our more advanced marketing courses, because that is how it is being used. And in fact, we talked about hybridization of your actual own creativity, your own knowledge with the AI as an enhancement tool. And that is happening now in the corporate world. And certainly we, as Katja said, we need to prepare our students for the real world. That is happening now, and we can only project how much more embedded AI will be in the next 3 to 5 to 10 years. So it really is incumbent on us to start to introduce students to AI, not as this dirty little secret of let me get my assignment done, my essay done by ChatGPT, but that it's really an enhancement tool for your work career.
Yeah. Oh, and I see some good suggestions also in the chat. I see that David Yates shared that there for critical thinking and AI literature skills to and creative problem solving at Buffalo State, compare the results from different AI tools and using the GM tech. So those are like excellent. I applaud those efforts. So those are good examples. And sorry, I was looking down. I was trying to fix the poll in Slido, but you can also send us the suggestions afterwards by email.
Yeah, we would love to connect with everyone.
Yeah.
Oops,
So
wait.
hold on.
Oh, yeah,
There
there
it
we
is.
go.
Yeah, there it is. So if the Slido is not working now with the suggestions, just put them here in the chat from Zoom, and then also please connect with us. I mean, we're always looking for co-conspirators to focus on this. I promise you, it's a positive term in this case.
Yeah, in our realm, that's it's always positive.
I love it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you both so much for bringing your expertise to us today. This is really, really outstanding. And I certainly hope folks will connect with you all Thank you again, everybody. I think we've got a 15-minute break until the next session. So thanks for being here. Thank you, Katya. Thank you, Ada. Have a great weekend.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for having us. And I really, enjoyed this conference, and thank you for having that conversation with everyone.
Definitely, definitely.
Yeah.
I echo
Anytime.
that as well. Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank
Yeah.
you both.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye.